My name is Chelsea Harbach, and I'm a PhD student in Greg Tilke's lab, which means that I study the soybean cyst nematode. Greg brought me on with the intention of looking at the interaction between cover crops and soybean cyst nematode because he's been getting a lot of questions from farmers as to whether or not there's an interaction between these two factors in the field, and cover crops are being increasingly implemented into the field as well. The scale of my research varies from large scale, which includes the strip trials that I'm conducting in collaboration with the Iowa Soybean Association, all the way down to experiments which are conducted in the greenhouse in more controlled environments. My goal is to determine if and how cover crops affect the soybean cyst nematode population density in the soil. Because we have several hypothesized methods, or what I like to call mode of actions, as to how cover crops might affect soybean cyst nematode population densities in the soil. Those modes of action in which cover crops might interact with soybean cyst nematode include the idea that they might function as a trap crop, where the nematodes enter the roots and then they die because they can't establish a feeding site. Or maybe the cover crop roots produce some sort of allelochemical which prevents the soybean cyst nematode eggs from hatching in the soil, which would prevent or decrease the overall reproduction of the nematode on the soybean roots following the cover crops. Or maybe the decomposition of the cover crops in the soil somehow negatively affects and even kills the nematode eggs in the soil. So with my research spanning in scales all the way from strip trials to controlled smaller field plots to a slew of different greenhouse studies, my goal is to determine if and how cover crops affect the soybean cyst nematode population density in the soil. If the cover crop somehow negatively affected the soybean cyst nematode population density in the soil, that means that they might be able to be included in an integrated pest management program, which would be great news for cover crops. At the very least, I want to show that cover crops don't increase the soybean cyst nematode population densities in the soil, so we know that using cover crops isn't going to increase the number of nematodes in your soil. And I would like to thank the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education branch of the USDA for helping support my research.